What's up everybody, it's Joe here with Joseph Blake Photography, and in today's video we're going to be diving into some of the recent controversies with Adobe related to their subscriptions, some lawsuits, and are they stealing all of our stuff? Alright, so first things first, disclaimer, I use Adobe products. I use Adobe Photoshop, I use Adobe Lightroom, I will occasionally dabble with Adobe Premiere, although I did switch to Final Cut Pro a few years back. But generally speaking, I have been using Adobe products in some form or another since I was about 11 years old, with Photoshop 3.5. But Adobe is the go-to software for photographers, for videographers, just for content creators in general. But recently, there has been a lot of frustration with some of their moves. Let's talk first about subscriptions. So Adobe moved to a subscription model a few years back. There are pros and cons to this. The pro, obviously, is that honestly, it makes the barrier for entry lower and makes it less expensive initially to be able to get into use the software that you need at a professional level to be able to produce the kind of content that you want to produce. But then pretty quickly, they made it clear that you wouldn't be able to buy the software outright, even if you could afford it. The only option that you had was to purchase Adobe software on a subscription, like a rental or a lease, and it's perpetual. So if you stop paying, you lose access to the tools that you've been paying and paying and paying for, even if you paid way more than you ever would have for the standalone software as a one-time purchase. It's gone. You're done. You'll lose access to it. And if you have projects or content that is in their proprietary format, like the PSD or project formats, well, you're going to lose those too. But the other issue is that over time, prices have been climbing and climbing and climbing, not just for individual licenses and not just for the bundles, but some of the new items that they've been adding that continue to increase costs if you need them. And as an enterprise customer, you are paying considerably more in a Teams environment for your monthly expenses for your team of content creators. It gets really hard for small businesses to keep up. And a lot of folks are starting to question the value and whether or not it justifies the cost. And for a lot of people who just keep using the software in the same way, they're not really seeing a lot of benefit for the increased cost. There's no new features, there's no additional things that make their lives easier. And while features are added and things are changing as newer versions of the software come out, again, if you've just got a real specific workflow that you've got it and it works and you're using it and you don't really want or need to change it, you don't have a choice but to continue paying for the latest features. Adobe needs to find a better balance between profitability and user satisfaction. This has also caused some creatives to look for alternatives. But now let's move on to the juicier parts, which are the lawsuits. Recently, Adobe has found itself in some hot water with some recent legal action. One of note against Adobe is as it relates to deceptive marketing practices. Cases that involve Adobe making claims and marketing statements about their products and what they can do, and users complaining that not only did they not do those things, but that some of the features, especially related to AI, were both buggy, incomplete, and not accessible in the fully fledged versions of the software. And this has led to a class action lawsuit. And these legal battles, they kind of rock the boat, right? They create a distrust with Adobe. Adobe is now pretty reviled in a lot of communities, which I think is a pretty big turn after a couple of years. They've really squandered what I think was a lot of goodwill in the creator community. But it's not just about money. It's about transparency and delivering on your promises. And when the things that you sell to creators and professionals don't do what you claim they do, or don't do them as well, then you run into problems. So there's some gaps between Adobe's marketing and the consumer experience. And when you're paying a premium price that keeps going up, you expect a premium experience. Another contentious point with Adobe, and this has resulted in an additional lawsuit from the US government, from the Department of Justice, is that Adobe's subscription model, which is based on a monthly price, is packaged in a surprisingly confusing way. So for a while there, if you went on Adobe's website and you said, I want to buy this software, let's say the photography bundle, which I think includes Photoshop and Lightroom, you would purchase that as a monthly price of about $20, but you would also have the ability to pay for it for a full year. But sometimes the full year cost was actually more than the monthly cost times the 12 months. If you canceled in the middle of the year, unbeknownst to you, because it wasn't even listed in the fine print on the website, was the fact that you actually signed up for a year contract. You're just paying for a monthly fee. And if you're not only on the hook for the rest of the year, but you will not be able to access that software for the rest of the year. So it's not like you can say, okay, I want to cancel, I'll pay out my contract, and I'll just use it until the year that I've apparently agreed to is up. Your access ends there, but you're paying for a full year, which puts you into a position where, and I have recently found myself in this situation on the enterprise level with a team with multiple people, with multiple accounts and licenses distributed across an admin portal, where I now have to kind of figure out, because the portal doesn't tell you this, when are my expiration dates? When can I cancel without having to pay the full amount and then lose access to my software? It's very confusing. The site doesn't really give you a lot of information, and that's what they're being sued for. It's a kind of a bait and switch. And it's these tactics that have led to additional lawsuits and, again, a lot of ill will in the creator community. And this could potentially cost Adobe millions, not just in a loss of potential revenue from people signing up and feeling like they want to use Adobe products, but also potential fines and other restrictions or lawsuits. So in a recent update to Adobe's terms of services for Creative Cloud, which you have to agree to in order to use the service and to use their software, even if you've already paid, or even if you're in the process of paying one of those monthly annual contracts, these terms are now going to change. And that's something that companies can just do. They can just change the terms on you midway through. Remember, it's a perpetual rental. You don't actually own anything. But this brought into question whether or not you actually even own the content that you create with their services. The included Adobe language in the terms of service made it sound like they would be using paying customers' content to train AI models. And just one interesting thing to note, if you've ever used Adobe Stock, they're now selling AI-generated content in Adobe Stock. What would prevent Adobe from including in their terms of service for Adobe Stock that anything you submit to be sold would potentially be used to generate or train AI models? And then when a potential customer comes to Adobe Stock to, say, search for an item, and maybe Adobe Stock finds something that you made, but doesn't want to pay you for it. And this goes for any stock photo site or stock video site. And they say, okay, well, why don't we just generate it and then we'll sell it to them and it'll be ours. We get to keep all the money. That's just one dystopian example of the potential outcome of big companies owning our content. So these sections got a lot of people talking. The idea that Adobe could use your photos, designs, and creative work to train their AI without explicit consent. It felt like a major overreach. Now, Adobe responded. They said users will have the ability to opt out, but I think we were way past that and the damage was done. So trust in Adobe that was already a little shaky from kind of their subscription model stuff got even worse. They didn't need this right now. And again, it reminded everybody that you got to read the fine print. A lot of people were outraged. They thought that their work was going to be inappropriately utilized and that they wouldn't be compensated for it. What's the purpose of making all of this, especially if this is your job to create content, if Adobe's just going to take it and build an AI model that will make 1 billion copies of it with slight variations and hallucinations without paying you a dime? Adobe has since walked back a lot of this language, and they are, I think right now, scrambling to find ways to repair their position in the community. As AI continues to evolve and these types of things become more common, this is the type of discussion that we're going to see more and more in creative communities. So how did the community react overall? It's been mixed. Some people are sticking with Adobe. They love their products, they think they work well, or in some cases, they don't really have a lot of choice because of their workflow. Other folks are jumping ship and looking at alternatives like Affinity Photo, Capture One, even GIMP. On the video side, obviously, folks are using DaVinci Resolve. There are other options, and this may be kind of an inflection point for the industry for more folks to get into the market and offer potentially competing products. And while some of these products might not have all the bells and whistles that Adobe products have, I think that there's an opportunity here for them to create that kind of rock solid, reusable workflow technology, especially if they're able to beat the subscription model pricing. So Affinity Photo, for example, is a one-time purchase, and it has a lot of tools that really stack up well against Adobe Photoshop. Capture One offers excellent processing of raw photos, and GIMP, which is a free option, has come quite a long way. It is a fascinating time in the creative landscape, and I think Adobe's issues have opened the door to competitors. And if you know anything about me, or if you watch the channel, you know that I love competition. I love the market to do its job, and I love to see things get disrupted a little bit sometimes. I'm really curious to see how this is all going to play out. So what's next? Adobe has some damage control to do, and they've got some lawsuits to potentially settle. They need to address the subscription concerns, they need to address the lawsuits, and they need to, I think, make some definite amends with the creative community as it relates to the usage of AI in their products. Being transparent and open about how their terms of service will affect us content creators and the things that we create is going to be huge for them. They've made some statements acknowledging and trying to address the concerns, but thus far, I don't think it's enough, and I think that they have a long road to travel. So that's a wrap up on today's video. Adobe is facing some serious challenges. AI is a huge part of our industry now, and we've just got to watch as it evolves and use it where it makes sense, and hope that there will be some consensus soon about creating the proper infrastructure and processes for creators to get paid when their work is used. It's important that we stay informed, that we stay vocal about our needs and concerns. So what about you? Are you sticking with Adobe? Have you dropped Adobe long ago? Let me know down in the comments if that is the direction that you're heading, or if you're already there, or if you are just a dyed-in-the-wool Adobe user, you love them and you're going to stick with them forever. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, give me the like. That button really helps the channel. And also go ahead and hit subscribe if this is the kind of thing that you're into. I do industry news, photography tips and tricks, how-tos, and every once in a while I go outside. So if you're into stuff like that, go ahead and hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I create a new video. But keep creating, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.